Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today with a question that I think, well, if we're all being honest, we've probably asked ourselves at 3 a.m.
Hmm.
Why does my life feel like it's completely stalled out?
Yeah.
Or, on the other hand, why does it feel like everything is catching fire at the exact same time?
The universal feeling of what is even going on.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
that sense of whiplash, right?
Yeah.
One minute you're riding high, the next you're in the trenches, and you're trying to find a pattern in all the chaos.
Well, today we are looking at a source that claims there is a pattern.
We're diving into a text called Divine Purpose in Every Season of Life by SoulCare Chronicles.
And this is a really fascinating one because it takes something we all intuitively know, the weather, the seasons, and uses it as a pretty rigorous framework for understanding our spiritual and emotional growth.
Right. And just to set the stage here, the source isn't just talking about like whether you need a coat or sunscreen.
Mm.
It's arguing that our existence isn't random. It's not just a series of lucky or unlucky events. The whole premise is that life is designed in seasons, and each season has a very specific, assigned utility.
That word utility is so key. The text, it pulls together Bible verses, theological commentary, prayers, all to make this case that even the seasons we hate,
Painful one.
the ones that hurt, the ones that are just boring, they are actually functional. They are doing something necessary, even if we can't see it at the time.
Which is, I mean, that's a bold claim,
Mhm.
especially when you're in a season that feels like a total dumpster fire.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to really test this framework. We're going to unpack the specific purposes of these seasons, look at the mechanics of how we're supposed to grow through them, and see if the source offers any real advice on how to survive the transitions without losing our minds.
We're losing hope. Because that's usually the first thing to go, isn't it?
It really is. So let's get into it. The source opens with a text that is, well, it's arguably one of the most famous passages of poetry in history. Even if you've never read the Bible, you've probably heard this. Maybe you know the bird song from the 60s,
Yeah.
Turn, turn, turn.
Ecclesiastes chapter 3. To everything there is a season.
That's the one. It's this rhythmic list of pairings, a time to be born and a time to die,
A time to weep and a time to laugh.
a time to mourn and a time to dance. It covers, I mean, everything: construction, destruction, war, peace.
It really covers the whole spectrum of the human condition.
Now, usually when I hear this, I kind of interpret it as a sort of fatalistic shrug.
Yeah.
Well, that's life. You win some, you lose some. It feels great passive.
Sure.
But the expert in our source material takes a totally different angle on it.
Yeah.
They argue this passage isn't about resignation at all. It's actually a command to slow down.
This was one of the first big aha moments for me in this reading. The source argues that so much of our modern anxiety comes from a lack of seasonality.
What do you mean by that?
We're obsessed with simultaneity. We want to plant the seeds and eat the fruit on the very same day.
We want to weep and laugh at the same time. Is that the idea?
In a way, yes. We want the full buffet of life on a single plate every single day. We want the thrill of a new beginning, which is spring, with the stability of a long harvest, fall, while, completely avoiding the cold of winter.
But that's not how it works.
It's not how time works. Ecclesiastes is suggesting you cannot have it all at once.
So you're saying this list, a time to weep, a time to laugh, it's basically a time management strategy.
In a spiritual sense, absolutely. It's saying, be where you are. If it is a time to weep, then weep. Don't try to force laughter because you think you should be happy.
Oh, that's interesting.
If it's a time to tear down, don't try to build. The source suggests we just exhaust ourselves trying to fast forward through the uncomfortable seasons to get to the good ones.
That is actually oddly validating. It's like a permission slip to feel bad if you're in a bad season.
It is, but the text introduces a complication here that explains why this is so hard for us.
Yeah.
It highlights verse 11. It says, God has set eternity in the human heart. Yet, and here's the kicker, humans cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end.
Eternity in the human heart. I mean, that is such a beautiful, poetic phrase. What does it actually mean in this context?
Well, the source interprets that as the deep, nagging intuition we all have that there's a big picture. I
Right.
feel like there's a grand narrative. We want to see the blueprint. We want to know how the story ends so we can feel safe in the middle chapters.
But we don't get the blueprint.
No, we get a flashlight. We can only see the step right in front of us. And that gap between our desire to know the whole story and the limitation of only living in the present, that's where the anxiety lives.
So we feel confused when life gets hard because we can't see how it fits into the beautiful ending.
Precisely. The text says God makes everything beautiful in its time. but the source clarifies that beautiful here often refers to the timing and the result, not necessarily the
The
process.
process can be ugly.
The process can be ugly. The process can be messy.
Yeah, that is a tough pill to swallow. Trust the process is great advice until the process involves, real pain.
Right, and the source acknowledges that. It actually provides a specific prayer for this exact feeling of disorientation. It's a tool for calibration.
I have that noted here. It's a prayer acknowledging that God has designed a purpose for every human life. And it asks for wisdom to understand where you're being called and to trust that everything you bring us to is good.
And in this context, good doesn't mean fun or easy, right?
Right.
It means purposeful. It means it's leading somewhere.
Okay, so that's the philosophical foundation. We have to accept that we're in a season we can't fast forward. But the source gets way more granular than that.
Mm-hmm.
It actually breaks down the 4 natural seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, and decodes them as specific spiritual states.
And this is where the framework becomes a kind of diagnostic tool. You can look at your life and ask, okay, which weather pattern am I in right now?
So let's walk through these. I want to see if I can self-diagnose. Let's start with spring.
Spring is the one everyone wants. In nature, it's, planting, buds opening, the return of color. Spiritually, the source defines this as the season of renewal.
This is the fresh start energy.
Exactly. It's when you feel energized, new opportunities are popping up, maybe you're starting a new relationship, a new job. The text suggests this is a time for spiritual spring cleaning, clearing out the clutter of the past to make room for this new growth. It's a season of pure optimism.
I think we all know what that feels like.
Yeah.
It's great. Now, summer. Culturally, we think of summer as the peak. Vacation, beach, long days, parties.
Right.
But the source takes a sharp left turn here.
It does. It throws a real curveball. The source focuses on the meteorology of summer, the heat, the intensity, the lack of rain.
Okay.
It identifies summer not as a party, but as a season of spiritual dryness.
Wow. That is the opposite of how I usually think of it. But if I think about a literal summer in a desert, yeah, it's grueling.
Think about the dog days of summer. It's a grind. The source likens this to those periods in life that feel like a waiting game. You're doing the work, you're showing up, but you are just exhausted. The ground is hard. You feel like you're wandering in a wasteland.
So if you feel like you're working incredibly hard but seeing 0 results and you're just tired, you might be in a summer.
According to this framework, yes, it's a season of testing. Can you keep walking when you're thirsty? But the reassurance the text offers is simply, rain will fall when God wills it. The heat isn't a permanent state. It's just a phase of exposure.
Okay, moving on to fall. The temperature drops, the leaves turn. Pumpkin spice, everything.
Of course. Fall is the season of transition. The source leans into the idiom turning over a new leaf, quite literally. As the trees change color, it represents a time in our lives where we recognize that we are changing.
It's that realization that what worked for me before just isn't working anymore.
Exactly. Maybe you've outgrown your job. Maybe a friendship is shifting. It's a time of harvest. You're reaping what you planted. But it's also a time of preparation for what's coming. You're gathering your resources for the cold.
Which brings us to the season everyone dreads, winter.
The season of short days, long nights, and dormant trees. And there's no sugarcoating it in the text. Winter represents purification, but the mechanism for that is dying to ourselves.
Oh, dying to ourselves. That sounds incredibly bleak.
It sounds bleak, but think about the biology of winter. The cold kills off the pests. The snow covers the ground and insulates the roots. The trees have to go dormant to conserve energy so they can survive.
So if a tree tried to bloom in January, it would die.
It would die. So the death here isn't final, it's functional.
Yeah.
The source argues that spiritually, winter is when we shed the layers we don't need, our pride, our reliance on success, old habits. We are stripped back so we can become pure again, like white snow.
So the argument is essentially that you can't have the new bloom of spring without the death of winter.
Correct. And if you try to skip winter, if you try to sustain that manic spring energy 365 days a year, you just deplete the soil. You collapse. The hard season is the prerequisite for the new season.
That makes a lot of sense biologically. But the source introduces another mechanism for growth that I find, honestly, much harder to accept emotionally. It's not just about the weather changing around you, it's about active intervention, the concept of pruning.
Yes, this is a central metaphor in the text, drawn from John chapter 15, the image of the vine and the gardener.
I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. And the text details what the gardener does. He cuts off every branch that bears no fruit. I get that part. Dead weight needs to go. If it's not working, you cut it.
That's the logical part, right? We understand firing an employee who doesn't do their job or ending a habit that is destructive.
But then it says, every branch that does bear fruit, he also prunes.
Yeah, it's the twist.
That feels so unfair. If I'm doing a good job, if the branch is healthy and it's producing grapes, why am I getting cut? Why am I losing things?
The text answers this directly, so that it will be even more fruitful. It's a question of quality versus quantity.
Can you unpack that for me? Because it sounds like a paradox.
Well, think about a real vineyard. If you let a vine grow wild, it'll produce a huge amount of leaves and shoots. It might even produce a lot of grapes. But because the plant's energy is spread across so many branches, the grapes themselves will be small and sour and weak.
So the plant is successful at growing, but it's failing at its actual purpose, which is producing quality fruit.
Exactly. To get that vintage wine, the gardener has to cut the vine back aggressively. He has to wound the plant to force all that energy into just a few high-quality clusters.
And the source applies this to our lives.
It does. Sometimes we're stripped of things that are good, a job we like, a comfort we enjoy, because those things are actually limiting our capacity for something best.
It's that old idea that good is the enemy of great.
That's it. But it hurts. Pruning is a reduction. You have less than you did before. You feel smaller.
The text includes a prayer for this, basically asking for the perspective to see the scissors as a tool of love, not punishment. But man, it is hard to feel that in the moment when you're the one getting snipped.
Which is why the source contrasts that painful act of cutting with a more passive, peaceful image of success that references Psalm 1.
The tree planted by streams of water.
The tree planted by streams of water, a classic image. Stability, health, peace.
Right.
But the source highlights a specific phrase that most people just skim over. It says the tree yields its fruit in its season.
In its season.
That is a massive permission slip for anyone listening who feels like they aren't doing enough. We live in this culture of always on. We expect 247 output. We expect to be crushing it at work and at home and in the gym every single day.
It's toxic productivity.
Totally. But this text says that even the ideal, healthy, successful tree, the one God loves, is not fruitful all the time. There are times when it's just a tree standing there with no fruit on it.
So if I'm not producing fruit right now, if I'm not hitting milestones or seeing results, it doesn't mean I'm broken.
Not if you're rooted. That's the distinction the source makes. The goal isn't constant production. The goal is constant connection to the source, the water. If you stay rooted, your leaf does not wither. You survive the drought. You survive the winter. The fruit will come back when the season turns.
That redefines success from output to endurance.
Correct. And the prayer associated with this section asks for patience when our fruit is not yet in season. It's a powerful reminder that dormancy isn't death.
So we've established that we can't do everything at once, that hard seasons have a purpose, and that pruning, while painful, is necessary for quality. But this brings us to the biggest hurdle of all. The thing that keeps us up at night isn't the definition of the seasons, it's the timeline.
The when question.
You all want to know when. When will this winter end? When will I get the new job? When will the grief finally stop?
And the source addresses this head-on with Acts 1.7. It is not for you to know the times or dates.
Well, that's blunt.
It shuts the door on the calendar completely. And to explain why, the source uses a metaphor called the driver's seat.
Tell me about the driver's seat.
The prayer in this section frames the whole struggle as a control issue. We think we are driving the car of our life. We think we set the speed and the route. We grab the wheel and try to steer ourselves out of the winter.
And the source says?
Move over. The prayer is an act of just relinquishing the wheel, admitting that God's timing is vastly different than our timing.
That is terrifying for a lot of people. Being a passenger feels passive. It feels like giving up.
It feels passive, but the source reframes it as the ultimate act of active trust. It's trusting that the driver knows the terrain better than you do. And to reassure us that the driver isn't asleep at the wheel, the text points all the way back to the beginning, to Genesis 8.22.
This is the verse about the consistency of nature, right?
Yes. Seed time and harvest, cold and heat, will never cease. The argument here is that the cycle itself is a promise. Seasons aren't a glitch in the system, they are the operating system. Spring always follows winter. It has never, in the history of the earth, failed to do so.
So the change is the only constant we can actually rely on.
Which means getting stuck is the real danger. The final warning in the source is about what it calls dwelling.
It quotes Isaiah 43. Forget the former things, I am doing a new thing.
Do not dwell on the past. This is so crucial because you cannot enter a new season if you are mentally still living in the old one. You can't embrace spring if you are still mourning the leaves of fall.
And the source gives a narrative example here, a case study that really brings this home. It's a story about a man named Will Brown from a piece called Moonrise.
This story is heavy, but it serves as a powerful cautionary tale.
So Will is a widower. He lost his wife 2 years ago. And the source describes him not just as sad, but as stuck.
He is riddled with grief and guilt. And the key part is how that grief affects his present. The text says he is unable to be the father his children need in the here and now.
He's physically there with them.
But spiritually and emotionally, he is living 2 years in the past.
That is heartbreaking, but also very real. Grief can be a place you get trapped in.
It absolutely can. And the source argues that Will is stuck in a perpetual winter. He is refusing to let the season change.
So what is the resolution for Will, according to the source?
The text explains that Will can only end his suffering when he finally realizes that God is doing a new thing. He has to stop dwelling.
Does that mean he has to forget his wife? Because that sounds really cruel.
No, and the source is very careful about that. It's not about erasing the memory. It's about recognizing that the season of active, paralyzing mourning has to transition into something else. He has to let the past be the past so he can live for his children in the present.
It brings up that imagery of God making streams in the wasteland.
And the final prayer really just caps this off perfectly. It says, "You make beautiful things out of dust."
After every winter, there comes a spring.
That's the promise. It's the cycle. You can't stop the wheel from turning, but you can choose how you face the turn. You can be dragged, kicking and screaming, or you can walk.
So what does this all mean for us? We've covered a lot of ground here, from Ecclesiastes to pruning to Will Brown.
If we zoom out, the message is really about alignment. We spend so much energy fighting the season we are in. We try to manufacture fruit in the middle of winter. We try to hoard branches during a season of pruning.
We try to drive the car when we belong in the passenger seat.
Exactly. And the source is saying, stop fighting the weather.
Stop.
Essentially, yes. If you are in winter, bundle up and rest. If you are being pruned, let the branches go so you can heal. If you are in summer, keep walking through the heat. The source promises that the design holds. If you stay rooted like that tree by the water, you will survive the cold. Your leaf won't wither.
And eventually, the season will change. Because as Genesis says, it always does.
It always does.
I think that is a powerful place to land. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. Something that struck me while we were discussing the pruning process. It's a bit of a challenge.
Let's hear it.
If you are listening to this and you feel like you are in a winter or a really painful pruning phase, instead of asking the usual question, when will this end, try asking the question the source implies. Ask, what dead branch or maybe even what good branch is being removed right now to make room for the new thing?
That changes the whole perspective. It moves you from victim to participant.
Exactly. Something to think about. Thanks for diving in with us today.
See you next time.